I can imagine a situation, though, in which the ruling elite of a country is receiving gratuities on the side that inure to the benefit of.
Absolutely, Chairman. I see this, and I don't mind calling them out, but Captain Traoré and Burkina Faso, as they know that both. Whether it's their gold reserves.
Burkina Faso's gold reserves are at the center of a fierce controversy after the U.S. accused President Ibrahim Traoré of squandering the nation's wealth. With Africa erupting in outrage and geopolitical tensions rising, what does this clash mean for the future of resource control on the continent? Could this spark a new era of African sovereignty? Chapter 1. Overview of the controversy.
The approach that we have had with USAID and the other things like the President's Initiative on AIDS, how does our U.S. approach compare and contrast to the approach of Russia in Africa and also Communist China in Africa?
Oh, Chairman, we've always had the lead. So what you're seeing in those two competitors or challengers, they're following in our wake. They see what works as far as our influence and deepening partnerships through those soft powers, whether it be health diplomacy or whether it be in development type programs. So they're following in our wake, trying to replicate what we do best. And I think the African countries know this, and so this is where, as we start to look at going forward, as State Department starts to reset these programs, looking at what worked and what didn't work, and doubling down on what does work. I think we have enough capital built up in these countries for them to ensure their stabilization and also prosperity. The other two competitors are just trying to replicate what we do best.
I can imagine a situation, though, in which the ruling elite of a country is receiving gratuities on the side that inure to the benefit of the strongman leader and not to the populace of the country. Does that sort of corruption and bribery go on with regard to the Belt and Road?
Absolutely, Chairman. I see this, and I don't mind calling them out, but Captain Traoré and Burkina Faso, as they know that both. Whether it's their gold reserves, that is all those proceeds are just in exchange to protect the junta regime. There's a number of examples across. Even in Sudan, what's going on with the rapid support forces and Burhan of the Sudan forces, when you get down to it, is all about the revenue that can be drawn out of that, and there are nefarious actors in the CCP or in sometimes Russia are complicit in those activities.
Let's start by setting the scene. Recently, the United States publicly accused Burkina Faso's President Ibrahim Traoré of mismanaging the country's gold reserves. Specifically, U.S. military officials claimed that instead of using the gold revenues to improve the lives of Burkinabe citizens, the government is diverting these funds to fund personal security and military expenses. This accusation has ignited a wave of outrage across Africa, with many political groups and governments pushing back hard against what they see as an unfair attack on Burkina Faso's sovereignty and economic independence. This controversy is not just about one country's internal affairs. It touches on broader issues like resource control, neo-colonialism, and the geopolitical tug-of-war playing out across Africa. Burkina Faso, a country rich in mineral wealth but struggling with political instability, finds itself at the center of this storm. So, understanding the background and context is crucial to grasp why this story has become so explosive. Chapter 2. Background on Burkina Faso's gold reserves. To understand why Traoré made this unprecedented move, we need to look at the bigger picture. Burkina Faso has been one of the poorest countries in the world, despite sitting on some of the richest gold reserves. Why is it that a country with so much wealth buried beneath its soil remains mired in poverty? The answer lies in a long history of exploitation dating back to the colonial era. For decades, foreign companies, primarily from Western countries, have had a stranglehold over Burkina Faso's gold. They come in, mine the gold, and ship it back home, leaving only a fraction of the profits behind. Meanwhile, the people of Burkina Faso see very little of the wealth generated from their own land. Now, think about it. What would you do if you were in Captain Ibrahim Traoré's position? If you were the leader of a country rich in resources but poor in wealth, would you continue to allow others to profit from your country's treasures? Or would you decide enough is enough? Burkina Faso is often overlooked on the global stage, but when it comes to gold production, it's a heavyweight in Africa. Burkina Faso is the continent's fourth largest gold producer, behind South Africa, Ghana, and Mali. In 2023, the country produced over 57 metric tons of gold, a staggering amount for a nation with a GDP hovering around $18 billion. Gold mining is a cornerstone of Burkina Faso's economy. It accounts for about 12% of the country's GDP and is the largest source of export revenue. This means gold is not just a mineral resource, it's a lifeline for the country's economy, government budget, and even social programs. The government relies heavily on gold revenues to fund public services, infrastructure projects, and security operations. However, the gold sector in Burkina Faso is complex. While large multinational companies operate some of the biggest mines, a significant portion of gold production comes from artisanal miners. These miners work informally, often without official permits, and their output frequently escapes government taxation and regulation. This informal mining sector is estimated to produce around 45 tons of gold annually, much of which is smuggled across borders, especially into neighboring countries like Togo. Chapter 3. Details of the U.S. accusations.
In the heart of Burkina Faso, where the earth yields gold like secrets whispered from ancient times, a storm brews, not of clouds, but of power, ambition, and the fierce will of a people determined to reclaim their destiny. Captain Ibrahim Traoré, a name that now echoes across the Sahel like a drumbeat, stands at the center of this tempest. At just 37, he is no ordinary leader. He is a spark, a symbol, a man who has dared to seize the reins of a nation long tethered to foreign hands. His rise, born from the ashes of a 2022 coup, was not merely a power grab, but a clarion call to a generation weary of broken promises, crumbling infrastructure, and the relentless plunder of their land's wealth. Burkina Faso, landlocked yet brimming with gold reserves worth billions, has become a stage where the drama of sovereignty unfolds, and Traoré, with his unyielding resolve, is its protagonist. But the world is watching, and not all eyes are kind. From the corridors of Washington, a shadow looms. Accusations from the U.S. military's AFRICOM, led by General Michael Langley, who claims Traoré is using the nation's gold not for its people, but to shield his own regime.
Captain Traoré in Burkina Faso, their gold reserves, that is all those proceeds are just in exchange to protect the junta regime. There's a number of examples across.
This charge, delivered to the U.S. Senate, is no idle remark. It is a gauntlet thrown, a narrative crafted to paint a young leader as a corrupt strongman. Yet, as the dust settles on these words, a question burns brighter than the Sahel's sun. Whose agenda is truly at play, and why now, when Burkina Faso is finally wresting control of its golden veins? Gold in Burkina Faso is more than a metal. It is the lifeblood of a nation's dreams. For decades, it flowed out in raw form.
Now, let's zoom in on the U.S. accusations themselves. These claims came from U.S. General Michael Langley, the commander of U.S. Africa Command. General Langley publicly stated that the gold revenues from Burkina Faso were not being used to benefit the Burkinabe people. Instead, he alleged that these funds are being diverted to pay for personal security and military expenses, accusing President Traoré's government of squandering the country's mineral wealth. This is a serious problem. It implies mismanagement and possible corruption at the highest levels of government. The U.S. argument is that instead of investing in public services like education, healthcare, and infrastructure, the gold money is fueling security forces and the president's protection. But this accusation did not come out of nowhere. It follows a period of tense relations between Burkina Faso and Western countries, especially France and the United States. In 2023, Burkina Faso expelled French troops who had been helping to fight Islamist insurgencies, signaling a shift in alliances. Since then, the country's military government, led by Traoré, has sought new partners, including Russia, to support its security needs. Chapter 4: African Political Reactions and Rejections.
Okay, well, you can't imagine how frustrating it seems to me that this mineral-rich continent has not been able to move to a utilization of the resources to benefit the people there. After all this time, it's a puzzle that we haven't unwound. Let me see if I can move to General Cavoli, and then I hope we can leave. You're aware of various voices coming from inside government here in the United States, as well as in the media, that have spoken with approval about the Russian-organized referendums in 2022 in so-called overwhelming Russian-speaking provinces. General Cavoli, tell us what you know and what you understand about the freedom of those organized referendums and the accuracy of them as a measure of public opinion.
Sure, Mr. Chairman. I don't think I'm familiar with the voices in Washington that are talking about this, but I do remember them very well. They were referendums in Lugansk, Donetsk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson provinces. They were in September 2022. They were roundly condemned by nations throughout the world and by international organizations. The Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe called them illegitimate. The United Nations called them illegal. I think the only country in the world that accepted the result of those referenda, other than Russia, was North Korea. So they have widely been considered not to be legitimate for a variety of reasons about the way they took place and taking place during a conflict by an occupying power.
Unsurprisingly, the U.S. accusations have been met with fierce criticism and rejection across Africa. One of the most vocal critics is South Africa's Economic Freedom Fighters, a prominent political party known for its anti-imperialist stance. The EFF called the U.S. claims unfounded and politically motivated, accusing the West of trying to undermine African governments that assert control over their resources. The EFF and other African voices argue that these accusations are a continuation of neo-colonial tactics. They say Western countries have a long history of interfering in African affairs, especially when African nations try to nationalize or take greater control over their natural resources. From their perspective, the U.S. allegations are less about transparency or good governance and more about maintaining Western influence and access to African minerals. This reaction is part of a larger debate on the continent about resource sovereignty. Many African leaders and activists believe that countries like Burkina Faso have the right to manage their resources independently, free from external interference. They argue that accusations like those from the U.S. can delegitimize legitimate efforts to reform mining laws, increase state revenues, and reduce foreign control. Chapter 5: Burkina Faso's mining sector landscape. Of course, this wasn't without resistance. The decision to ban gold exports has sparked outrage among Western nations whose gold markets have been disrupted. Countries that have historically benefited from Burkina Faso's resources are now seeing their profits decline. But Captain Traoré remains undeterred. He's aware of the challenges ahead, but he's also determined to see his vision through. Traoré's government has already halted the issuance of export permits for artisanal and semi-mechanized gold mining, closed 43 gold mining sites in the Boucle du Mouhoun region, citing security concerns, and launched the country's first gold refinery in Ouagadougou. The refinery is expected to produce 400 kilograms of gold per day, ensuring that Burkina Faso retains knowledge and control over the true content of its raw gold. To understand the full picture, we need to look at Burkina Faso's mining sector today. The industry is a patchwork of large-scale mining operations, artisanal miners, and government initiatives aiming to formalize and expand the sector. Major international mining companies dominate the formal sector. Canadian firms like IAMGOLD and Endeavour Mining operate some of the largest gold mines in the country. Russian company Nordgold has also become a significant player, especially after being granted a mining lease in 2023. These companies bring investment, technology, and expertise, but they also repatriate much of the profits, which has been a point of contention. On the other hand, the artisanal mining sector is huge and largely informal. It's estimated that artisanal miners produce around 45 tons of gold annually, almost as much as the formal sector. However, much of this gold is smuggled out of the country, avoiding taxes and government oversight. This illicit trade undermines government revenues and fuels local conflicts. Recognizing these challenges, the Burkina Faso government has launched initiatives to formalize artisanal mining, improve regulation, and combat smuggling. One key goal is to build the country's first gold refinery. Instead of exporting raw gold, Burkina Faso wants to process gold domestically, adding value and creating jobs. Chapter 6: Impact of political instability on mining.
2022, Burkina Faso had a significant gold production of over 20,000 kilograms, most of which was exported to Western countries. Unfortunately, the mining and extraction operations were mainly controlled by foreign companies, leaving Burkina Faso with little benefit. It's important to note that the reported gold amount is likely lower than what was actually extracted. This exploitation of Burkina Faso's gold resources has been an ongoing issue since the country gained independence. Despite being the 14th largest global gold producer, Burkina Faso continues to face poverty and its associated challenges. Countries like France, Italy, and the UK, lacking substantial gold mines of their own, have accumulated substantial amounts of gold in their reserves. However, Burkina Faso's leader, Ibrahim Traoré, has taken a strong stance against this unfair exploitation. He made a bold decision to halt all gold sales to the West, causing shockwaves among Western countries heavily dependent on Burkina Faso's gold. Following Ibrahim Traoré's executive order to stop gold sales, Western leaders hurriedly made emergency visits to African countries. Secretary of State Antony Blinken visited Ghana, Ethiopia, and Kenya, while Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen visited Zambia. Even King Charles of England paid visits to African nations. These visits aimed to ensure that other African countries wouldn't follow Burkina Faso's lead. Although the order hadn't been issued at that time, Western leaders were aware of the impending action and its potential consequences.
Unfortunately, political instability has complicated these efforts. Since 2022, Burkina Faso has experienced 2 military coups, leading to a fragile political environment. The security situation has deteriorated, especially in the northern and eastern regions where many gold mines are located. Islamist insurgencies and armed groups have made mining operations risky and expensive. As a result, several mines have temporarily shut down or scaled back production. In 2023, gold output dropped by about 15%, reflecting the impact of insecurity and political uncertainty. Foreign investors have become wary, and some mining companies have seen their stock prices fall following announcements from President Traoré's government about revoking mining licenses and nationalizing certain operations. Chapter 7: Captain Ibrahim Traoré. finally responds to U.S. General Langley.
Our country has long been in a very complicated system. Most of you who are young like me, we were born into this system. But that's not what can allow Burkina to thrive. Because in this situation, there are only two cases. Either we accept to fight, or we remain slaves forever. I told you once, there are those who are slaves in their minds. They can only serve their master. And those people try every time to manipulate you. You must advise each other. Because every situation can be exploited by these enemies of the nation to try to discourage you, to demotivate you. So, you must advise each other and not pay attention to certain remarks, even on some media. Not everyone is obliged to be patriotic. You are the first patriots.
Captain Ibrahim Traoré didn't hold back in his response to the U.S. accusations. His words were a fierce rallying cry for African sovereignty and resistance against foreign domination. There are only two cases. Either we accept to fight, or we remain slaves forever, Traoré declared, emphasizing that true freedom demands active resistance. He warned against psychological manipulation, saying, "There are those who are slaves in their minds. They manipulate you to demotivate you. You must advise each other and not pay attention to certain remarks, even on some media." Traoré also criticized some NGOs, labeling them as tools of foreign control designed to destabilize African nations. This so-called NGO produces reports claiming that the FDS and the VDP commit abuses. "It's to tarnish your morale," he said. Above all, he called for unity and patriotism. "You are the first patriots. Defend your homeland. Do not listen to those who try to discourage you." His message was clear. Africa's wealth belongs to Africans, and the fight is for their future. "We will fight and reclaim our lands, our wealth. It belongs to us and our children." Chapter 8. Recent nationalization and legal disputes.
The Bongu and Wanyun gold mines in Burkina Faso were previously owned by an African mining company. But this is now set to change, as Ouagadougou agreed a deal on Tuesday to nationalise the mines for around $80 million. Last year, Endeavour Mining had agreed to sell the mines to Lilium Mining for almost 4 times that sum. The companies had been locked in a legal dispute, with Endeavour accusing Lilium of missing payments, while Lilium alleged that London-listed Endeavour had misrepresented financial information about the mines. However, as part of Tuesday's settlement, they will abandon these legal cases. The nationalisation follows a growing pattern of African governments, especially those under military juntas, seeking to exert control over their natural resources.
All right, let's get right into one of the biggest shakeups in Burkina Faso's mining sector nationalization. Think of this. 2 of the country's most important gold mines, Bongu and Wagnion, were at the center of a heated legal battle. These mines had just changed hands in a massive $300 million deal between Endeavour Mining, a big London-listed player, and Lilium Mining, an African company. But things quickly soured. Endeavour said Lilium missed payments, and Lilium shot back accusing Endeavour of hiding the mine's real financial state. Lawsuits were flying, and the future of these gold mines was up in the air. Then, in August 2024, the Burkinabe government stepped in with a bold move. They nationalized both mines for just $80 million, fraction of the original deal. That's a power play. The government's mediation ended the legal feud, with both companies agreeing to drop their lawsuits. Endeavour even thanked the government for stepping in and smoothing things over. But this isn't just about settling a corporate spat. It's about Burkina Faso reclaiming control over its mineral wealth. President Ibrahim Traoré's administration has made it clear they want more of the profits from gold to stay in Burkina Faso and benefit the Burkinabe people. This move is part of a wider trend in Africa, especially in countries led by military governments, where leaders are pushing for greater state control over natural resources. It's about economic sovereignty, Pan-Africanism, and breaking old patterns where foreign corporations walked away with most of the profits. Chapter 9. The Nordgold mining lease and Russia-Burkina Faso relations. Now let's talk about geopolitics, because Burkina Faso's mining story isn't just about gold, it's about alliances. While the country is pushing out some Western interests, it's rolling out the red carpet for new partners, especially Russia. This year, the government granted a major mining lease to Nordgold, a Russian company expanding its footprint in West Africa. Why does this matter? For starters, it shows a major shift in Burkina Faso's foreign policy. After kicking out French troops and cooling relations with the West, the country is teaming up with Russia for investment and security. The timing couldn't be better for Burkina Faso. Gold prices are high, and Russia is eager to invest, bringing in capital and technical expertise. This partnership is about more than just money. It's about the alliance of Sahel states, a new bloc formed by Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali. These countries are looking to cooperate more closely, especially in mining and security, and Russia is stepping in as a key ally. For the Burkinabe government, working with Nordgold is a way to diversify partnerships, reduce reliance on Western companies, and assert more control over their resources. Chapter 10. Economic implications of gold management. And Traoré didn't waste any time. In August 2024, he inaugurated Burkina Faso's first treasury deposits bank in Ouagadougou, a pivotal move towards achieving financial sovereignty. The BDT is designed to serve as a public financial institution that provides banking services to all citizens, from urban centers to the most remote villages. Its primary mission? To handle the banking functions of the public treasury, offering services like account management, resource collection, and transaction processing. By creating a bank that stretches across regional, provincial, and departmental treasuries, Traoré aimed to make financial services accessible to everyone in Burkina Faso. This is more than just the launch of a bank. It's a critical step toward reclaiming the nation's financial sovereignty, allowing the country to manage its resources without foreign interference. Let's break down what all this means for Burkina Faso's economy. Gold is central here. It's worth about $6 billion a year, a third of the country's GDP. So, when the government takes steps to nationalize mines or renegotiate contracts, it's not just about politics, it's about survival. By bringing Bangu and Wagnion under state control and partnering with companies like Nordgold, the government hopes to boost revenues. More money from gold means more funding for schools, hospitals, and roads. Plus, with the construction of the country's first gold refinery approved last year, Burkina Faso is looking to keep even more value from its gold at home, instead of shipping it out as raw material. But there are some real challenges. Years of insecurity and mine closures have hit production hard. The artisanal mining sector is massive and mostly informal, with tons of gold smuggled out of the country, meaning the government misses out on huge tax revenues. Tackling illicit mining and tax evasion is a top priority, but it's easier said than done. And what about jobs? Nationalization could mean more local hiring and skills development, but only if the government can manage these complex operations well. There's always the risk of mismanagement or corruption, which could eat into the gains from nationalization. So, while there's a lot of hope riding on these changes, the government must deliver real results to keep public support. Chapter 11. Broader African and global context.
In Ghana's western region, about 300 kilometers from the capital, Accra, there is a gold mine that once symbolized international investment and economic hope, the Dagman mine. But as of April 18, 2025, everything has changed. The government of Ghana has taken control of the mine, ending a 30-year partnership with Abozo Goldfield Limited, a subsidiary of the gold mining company Goldfields Limited.
And the Minerals Commission has taken a decisive step to assume operational control of the Dagman mine of Abozo Goldfields Limited, AGL, upon the expiration of the 30-year lease due on 18th of April 2025. This follows the unsuccessful renewal application by AGL, a subsidiary of Goldfields Limited.
Let's zoom out for a second. Burkina Faso's moves are part of a much bigger trend across Africa. From Zimbabwe to Tanzania, governments are rewriting mining codes, renegotiating contracts, and sometimes nationalizing assets to capture more value from their natural resources. It's especially common in countries with military or transitional governments, where leaders are looking to shore up their legitimacy and fill state coffers. Globally, gold is hotter than ever. Prices are high thanks to economic uncertainty and geopolitical tensions, and everyone from Russia and China to Western multinationals wants a piece of Africa's mineral wealth. This competition is reshaping alliances and forcing African governments to think carefully about who they partner with and how they manage their resources. For Burkina Faso, the nationalization of gold mines and the pivot toward Russia is both a response to local challenges and a reflection of these global shifts. The country is betting that more control over gold will mean more stability and bargaining power. But there's always the risk of isolation from Western markets and the challenge of running these operations efficiently without outside help. Chapter 12. What comes next?
The West fears a model, a spark that could spread, dismantling a colonial template that says Africa can have raw materials, but never true wealth. Unity is Africa's shield. Without it, the continent is vulnerable, picked off nation by nation. South Africa faces sanctions. Rwanda is accused of fueling conflict in Congo, and now Burkina Faso is in the crosshairs. Division is the West's weapon, wielded through misinformation, economic pressure, and calls for elections that distract from sovereignty. They want Burkinabe to take to the streets, to doubt their leader, to believe he is hoarding gold while they starve. But the truth is, on social media, in government reports, in the fields where tractors now plow, Traoré is not perfect, but he is a visionary, a man who said, "Homeland or death," and meant it.
The outrage sparked across Africa after the US accused Burkina Faso's President Ibrahim Traoré of squandering gold reserves is more than a headline. It's a reflection of a deeper struggle for control over the continent's vast resources. Burkina Faso's bold moves to nationalize mines, push back against foreign narratives, and forge new alliances signal a turning point in Africa's fight for economic independence and dignity. But this battle is far from over. With security challenges threatening gold production, ongoing disputes over resource management, and geopolitical tensions intensifying, the future of Burkina Faso and Africa's broader resource sovereignty hangs in the balance. Will African nations succeed in reclaiming their wealth and shaping their own destinies? Or will external powers continue to dictate terms? As millions watch closely, this controversy serves as a wake-up call. Africa's resources belong to its people, and the fight to protect them is a fight for freedom, justice, and a prosperous future. The question remains, how will Africa rise from this storm? And what role will leaders like Traoré play in shaping a new chapter for the continent? In the end, the real test will be whether these bold moves translate into better lives for ordinary Burkinabe, and whether Africa's resource-rich nations can finally turn their mineral wealth into lasting prosperity. Curious to see how this unfolds? Hit that subscribe button and join us for your front row seat to the biggest stories shaping Africa and beyond. Don't forget to like the video if you find this insightful. Thanks for watching.